Okay, we're actually going to read some Shulchan Aruch today. The Shulchan Aruch had said that Gevinas Akum is Asur, and the ending words of the Mechaber were Afilu Hamidu Basav Masur. It's Asur even if you made the cheese with vegetable rennet, Asav. And then the Ramah continues on that, and he says V'chein HaMinig. That's the minig that we say that even if you made it with Asavim, it's still Asur. Ve'ein Lefritz Getter. A person shouldn't go ahead and say, I figured out why it's really mutter, and I can go be matter, and you shouldn't be parted together.
And the only difference is only going in a sucker?
As opposed to what?
The whole thing of Gevina.
Well, it's the same thing. In other words, of course, you're not going to eat the Gevina if you didn't know that they made it with kosher ingredients. Of course, they have to have them made it with kosher ingredients. But even if you know that they made it with kosher ingredients, even if they knew how you do by something, still, don't go ahead and just say, so it's mutter. In other words, that there's no, we'll talk in a second, right? You shouldn't think that there's no Isser in Gevinas Akum. No, there really is an Isser in Gevinas Akum. Okay, so then Rabbanan, yes. Imloi, except this is the Rambam continues. Imloi b'makom shenagu b'hem heter mikat ma'adim. Except for people who have an old minute that they don't care about Gevinas Akum, then they can do it. So those people could be samach on that. Okay, we'll talk about that where that comes from. Well, they can be makel if they know that it was kosher. It was kosher. If they
agree to this, it's Gevinas Akum. They don't deny this is Gevinas Akum.
So we're going to talk about this a second. Just give me a second. We'll talk about that. So hold on a second. We're going to talk about that a second. So the Ramah says there are such a people, such a minute, but our minute is not like that. Ain't lift together. Okay. And that was what the Mechaber was hinting at when the Mechaber said, "I feel we do about something." He's hinting at, "Don't do like those people." And they're always doing such a minute, but we don't do it there. What? It's such a sheet. I'm going to read a few more words that are sort of for today. If the Yid saw the making of the cheese and the milking of the cows, then mutter, then the milk is mutter. That's the way we do it in our countries. He's going back on this last point, which is really more for next time. I keep saying that, but it's really for next time.
Is the issue the milk, or is the issue...
Very, very good question. I'm going to talk about that also in a few minutes. Very good question. So the minig is the Ramah. This word of the Ramah are going back on what he just said. That watching the milking and the cheese making is what makes it kosher. That's the minig is to be samach on that thing. Okay, we're going to talk about that a drop. It's really for next time. Okay. So what's going on here in the Mechaber and the Ramah is that Tosfos brings in the words are that Rabbeinu Tam says and the going in our Voina say also that there's no issue of, basically, in effect, there's no issue of Gevinas Akum nowadays. Okay, what we call the issue of Gevinas Akum is, in effect, there's no such... You'll hear, I'm going to explain. As of from their time, as of today, there doesn't exist such a thing.
It really depends on where they were. If there's still chashash for the Kashering, probably would have said.
Right.
I'm jumping ahead.
I just opened my mouth. What did I say? I read only one line so far. Okay, so he says like this. The Gemara says many reasons why Gevinas Akum should be asur. The Gemara has a whole bunch of reasons. One of the reasons is because of Gilui or Nikur, it's the same thing, which is that if you leave something, a liquid uncovered, a snake might go in and leave some poison inside of it. And Rabbeinu Tam says that's how we paskin. That really the risk isser is because of this chash of Gilui. And he says all things that have to do with snakes don't apply in countries where there are no snakes, where there are no poisonous snakes floating around. So in Chicago or in Poland or wherever they live, I don't know where they live. Start with people, start with that much, what? France, wherever they live, in those places there were poisonous snakes floating around. There's no such chashash. How do we know that that's true? That if there's no snakes, there's no chashash? Because if you turn to the next page in the Shulchan Aruch, it's in Kuf Tezayin, it says that all those kind of halachas that depend on chashash on the chashim don't apply nowadays. Okay, it really doesn't only apply to cheese. It would apply to all liquids. You can't leave a cup of water out uncovered for more than a little bit because a snake might come in and leave some poison in it. And the Shulchan Aruch says we don't worry about those things nowadays. Those kind of takonas that were made for that reason, in places where there are no snakes, no poisonous snakes, you don't have to worry about them. So therefore the Rabbeinu Tam says we paskin like that sheet in the Gemara. The whole reason for the Isser Gevinas Akum is because of the chash of Gilui, and therefore it doesn't apply nowadays. So you can eat cheese. There's nothing wrong with eating cheese because we're eating cheese that, so to speak, Gevinas Akum, because it doesn't apply anymore. It's just this page and that's probably why that next simon is about that. This page and this page are the same thing. It doesn't. They're both much. Okay. Okay. Now he says. By the way, he says, what about Lamais is maybe they put in trade milk into it. Maybe they put in milk from a non-kosher animal, he says don't worry about that. Because if the person is making cheese, we're going to talk about this more, but when a person is making cheese, then they wouldn't put in treif milk, because treif milk doesn't turn into cheese. So nobody would do that. Maybe they used kavis nevel, maybe they used animal rennet when they made the cheese. He said, nah. Now in our places, people use vegetable protease. They don't use animal rennet, so don't worry about it. You don't have to be kosher with it. What is it?
What are we talking about?
500 years ago. 800 years ago.
They had vegetable...
Rennet, yes. So he says, so those chashas, those are potentially real problems, but don't worry about those problems. They're not, realistically, nobody would put in treif milk, nobody uses animal rennet, so it's not a problem. So he says it's mutter. Okay? So the simple reading is, the simple reading of, when you read it, the simple reading of how you read Tosfos who brings this is that, what about the fact that they might have used animal rennet? How do we know that they're not using animal rennet? How do we know that the person is not? The answer is, it's like any other food that we want to know if it's kosher. There are rules in the Torah how to figure something out. There's roivs, there's chazakas. So most people don't use the treif rennet, so that's good enough. Okay, that would be, he seems to be saying you follow the rules like any other place. That is to say, my point is like this. What happens if the simple reading of Tosfos, to me, the reading of Tosfos was, what happens if you live in a place where 95% of the people use only kosher rennet? Would Chachmei, the Geoinei Nirvana, been makel to allow you to eat it? 95%. There are some people who use the treif rennet, but 95% of the people use kosher rennet. So to me, the simple reading of Tosfos was that the takana is because of snakes. Don't worry about that. The takana, don't worry about that. What about, they might use treif rennet? So that's like a regular thing, like any other thing. You follow roivs and chazakas to make that determination whether it's mutter or not. That's it. How I would have read Tosfos. The Chazon Ish and Rav Moshe both, in each of them, write in one place that the Geoinei Nirvana only make if everybody uses kosher rennet, not if the following the rules of roivs and chazakas. I have to tell you something. The Chazon Ish and Rav Moshe each write in a different place, not like that, but they each write in one place and more strongly that they're only being makel in cases where it's completely everybody uses kosher rennet, but if there's anybody who uses treif, then he would not be makel. Okay? And for the Chazon Ish, we're going to talk about the Chazon Ish in a second. The Chazon Ish is like integral to what he's saying. The Rav Moshe is just making the point of it, but it's a huge nafkamina. Okay, it's a big nafkamina because there are people. Lamais is there are people who have there are people here and there who say they have a family minhag, the minhag kadmonim, to be makel like the Chachmei Nirvana, like a Rebbeinu Tam, like this kula. Okay, so that means if those people have such a minhag, and the Rama says if you have such a minhag, that's okay, you can follow that minhag, but you can only follow that minhag in a case where it applies. Okay, so now. Okay, that's a fair point. That's a fair point. Maybe we should say that one guy living in Chicago doesn't count. Maybe okay, but the question is, let's say we even had the place. Let's say the whole Pittsburgh had that minhag to be made like that. You would have to then know: is he making only in cases where 100% of the people use vegetable rennet? That's not America. In America, people don't use 100% of people don't use vegetable rennet, or for sure not in all cheeses. Maybe in certain cheeses you would say that, and not in other cheeses, but it's not 100%.
In certain cheeses, it's 100%.
That will have to discuss. But there are certain cheeses, it really does depend on it. Certain cheeses are more or less likely to use it. So maybe we can figure out, okay, in certain cheeses it's okay, but they won't be making every place. For sure in Europe, it's more common that people use animal rennet. So that is to say, even the people, according to that, even the people who have the kula would not be able to be making just eat anything. They have to be a little smart in that. If you're reading it the way it sounded to me, like sometimes, and some of them are Shmois and Rav Moshe, that he's just thinking you follow the regular rules of roivs and chazakas, so you follow the regular rules, and the rule will be 95% of the people use it, then that's good enough.
According to Rebbeinu Tam, there was no zero of a chashash of using that kosher.
And therefore what?
So therefore, obviously when they make it zero, they didn't have the chashash. So why now we will be having...
No. So
Rebbeinu Tam held the chashash is because of a nikar. So if there's no nikar, then they never made the head of chashash of
and therefore, so the end of your sentence is, and therefore...
So then the rules of chazaka should apply.
So that's the simple... That's how I read Tosfos. That's how I read Tosfos. That the rule... Therefore, we follow the regular rules. Now it's a chashash like any other. Does that coffee has something trade for either? We have regular rules, so we have...
So why are the Chazon Ish and Moshe saying that?
So Rav Moshe says it. I'm not sure why Chazon Ish. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Chazon Ish in a minute. it's integral to the way the Chazon Ish learns Pshat in this whole thing. It like fits into what he's learning that he has to say that. Okay, he understands. Well, I'll tell you in a second. I'll say it shortly. That's what I mean. Is that I'll say it in brief. The Chazon Ish, the Chazon Ish learns that even according to those Rishonim who Mekel, the still the chashash of Kevis Nevela is on the same level as the chashash of Chalvak. That you have to have a birur that it's there. You have to have not just a regular birur. You have to have stronger birur than the regular roivs and chazak. You have to have a stronger birur. But you don't have to have to the point the way the Shulchan Aruch says it. It has to takon that the Yid has to watch it like that, that high level of birur. But you don't have to have 100%. So it's a question. I'm just saying that the simple reading, when I read Tosis, I read like David said, which is, he's just saying that's not part of Takana. The Takana is because of Gilul. So now, what about Kevis Nevela? It's just done. That's regular rules. He's like sort of mentioning it in passing. Kevis Nevela is just like a passing issue. I see, again, Ramosha and the Chazon Ish didn't see it that way. Okay. The Shulchan Aruch, when he said, I feel like I'm do basavim, we're understanding that the Shulchan Aruch is coming to argue on, he's in a passive way arguing on this Rabbeinu Tam. The Ramah speaks it out, but the Shulchan Aruch is arguing on it. If you look at the Beis Yosef, you'll see that he says like this. He says it dropped differently than the way you would read in the Shulchan Aruch. Obviously, that's what he means. He says it dropped differently. He says, maybe it's true that the takana of Gevinas Akum is because of Gilui, because of snakes. Now, it's hard to read that because the Shulchan Aruch says the nation of Midian That's what the Shulchan Aruch says. But what he means is like this. He says, when the takana is completely because of Gilui, leaving a cup of water on the table, the only reason you can't come back 10 minutes later and drink it is because a snake might have put in poison into it. If you're in a place with no snakes, then the takana falls off. The Chum didn't make that takana if there's no snakes. But when there's a takana that's made primarily because of snakes, but there are other potential chashashas like sort of floating around in the background, which is, you could use Kevis Nevela, and other things the Gemara says, you could put on a wine onto it, all kinds of other like minor chashashas. In those cases, if there's no problem of Gilui, Chacham still kept the takana. If the takana was made for one main reason, and there are other like smaller reasons, then even if the main reason of Gilui doesn't apply, in that we still have to be choshesh for it, even if we don't have any snakes, you still have to be choshesh for it. So that is to say, when the Mechaber says he means is that in this case there's an additional reason, not only the Gilui. I can't tell you that the reason is because of Gilui, because you can turn the page and find out that Gilui is not gay nowadays. But it's in this case, it's not only Gilui, but there's also a minor chash of Kevis Nevela, and the Chacham therefore kept the takana in force. When they made the takana, they said this takana of Gilui should last no matter what.
That's not what it is.
You don't like that? Okay, but Beis Yosef says that.
No, he said he quotes a smach. And the smach says that, But he quotes a Rash from the Rambam and says it's a reserve dominion.
Okay.
So a reserve dominion is, even if the time falls away, you still go with it.
But he's answering the question, which is that if the reason is because...
No, if the says Mefurish, it's not to come dominion.
Right. So that's a question. What he says that. Okay, that's
it says dominion, like he says behind this.
It's a question. Okay. But what I'm saying is like this. So, but if what happened to his point, which is if the reason is because of Gilui, if the reason is...
so he's passing like the Rash from the Rambam.
Okay.
He said the reason not because of Gilui is because of Avela.
That's how I read it. It could be like that. Okay. He said, it could be right. I'll accept that. But he just brought up a point that there's such a... Okay, let me take it this way. There's a possibility that it could be that Rabbeinu Tam is right. That really we paskin that the din is because of Gilui. Even though we paskin like that, still... this could be usher even though water is not usher. Somehow cheese could say usher. No, that's not. Okay.
So he's only marked with Mekoyim Shenoagu. According to you, no. Mekoyim Shenoagu is charged because it was 100%. The other place in Sochel.
Who is
the Machlekes over here?
Again?
The Shulchan is saying this clearly two minhagim.
The Ramah, the Shulchan. No, the Shulchan just says, he doesn't say two minhagim. The Ramah is the one who said two minhagim.
Okay, so that's the Ramah, right?
I think, the Ramah, go ahead.
So it says two minhagim, right? Clearly they argue this two minhagim.
Yes.
According to you, there's no argument.
Right, no, correct. He's not saying the Beis Yosef. I'm saying the Beis Yosef have brought up such an idea that it could be, even if Rabbeinu Tam is right, that we paskin that the Chashash is Gilui, still it's not getting nowadays. How could that be? If you turn the page in Kuf Tezayin, it says Gilui doesn't apply nowadays. So he said, it could be that this kind of Gilui applies and that kind of Gilui doesn't apply. That's what he's trying to explain. You're right. The Ramah's not going to be like that. That's not going to be. Okay. Okay, I'll skip my story. Okay. This is a story. Okay, I'll tell you a story. Okay, the short story. But this that we say that our minhag, there are very few people who still say that they follow, that they have a tradition to follow that minhag. But Rabbi Shabta tells me a story that there was, after World War II, there was an American soldier, a Jewish soldier, driving around trying to help out people. And he's driving around in Europe trying to help people. And he finds somebody who had survived concentration camps. And it seemed that for those people it was very good to eat cheese. For whatever reason, that was considered helpful. So he offered him some cheese. So the Yid said to him, is this Gevinas Yisroel? He says, no, of course not. It's just plain old American cheese or monster cheese. Whatever you want, he was offering him, just a plain old cheese. And the Yid, this survivor, turned back to this American soldier and says to him, he says, God didn't save me from the concentration camps to eat Gevinas Yisroel. Okay, so that was his picture of how seriously we take him in. Okay, so anyhow, that's true.
In America, years ago, they would eat regular cheese.
Some people.
Some people would eat
Kraft. Right. So there were people. So again,
I don't know how far. The 30s, 20s, something like that.
No,
so the point is, wait, time out. The questions on that. So we mentioned the question on that. There's a question on that, which is, it may be that even those people only make it in a place where they only use vegetable rennet. And maybe that's what was going on in the 20s, but nowadays it's not so. So it's a question. It depends how you read what Rabbi Tam says.
Wasn't it in the 60s, 70s?
Yeah. So it depends how you read what Rabbi Tam says. If you want to go out today and eat the cheese and say, I'm sorry, that cheetah, I want to say that cheetah, you have to really know which way. How do you read Rabbi Tam? It's a question how to read him.
No, I'm not getting into that. I'm just saying that's
yes, there were people.
That the word people, and in America was, at one point, it was much more prevalent for
yes.
people.
Yes.
And he keeps talking. And Abraham said he was there when someone hits up a salvation.
Yes.
I'm talking about. Said that, no more.
Yes. And it's one of the when you find, I'll mention it, when you find these Kashering, people who purport that something's kosher that we don't hold like, one of the things that these kind of people do, is that they say is, we hold like the Garnier Nirvana, we hold like Gevinas Yisroel. Okay? That they're out there, it's a, conservative Jews have decided, they picked up on that, they said, hey, we can make more for kosher. They decided we could hold like the Garnier Nirvana, it's right here, brought in Shulchan. If you have a minute, they say the minhag of America is, they eat Chazon. So of course they eat Gevinas Yisroel. They say that's our minhag. It's our minhag that we eat Gevinas Yisroel. Look, we're all eating it, so it's a minhag. Okay, so obviously they missed the point. If you could eat really treif, then you can't say my minhag is that I eat Gevinas Yisroel. You see, it's a right. It's a minhag America. Okay?
Yeah, but Orthodox, they do it too.
Like Yossi said, at this point, there's very few people who consider themselves Orthodox who still say that they follow them. Okay. Now, everything that I told you so far is the regular, simple way that everybody reads the Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah.
It's getting off the subject, but I think it's important.
No, it's good.
What you said that people hold and don't hold Orthodox. When I first started learning, I had what I thought was good authority to go in somebody's house. So, and this is in Chicago here, and it was a much smaller community in those days. I went to the house, and the balabus was late or something. I don't remember exactly what it was. I was talking to the balabus still in the kitchen, and she had a walk-in pantry, and the door was open. So I wasn't peeking. I was looking around, and I happened to see that they had all kinds of stuff in the cabinet that had triangle K on it. So we won't discuss whether triangle K is kosher or not kosher. I was taught that we don't eat triangle K for whatever reason. So I went into the cabinet and I picked up something, and I said, I've never seen this hashgacha before. What is it? He said, triangle K, it's the best in the world. Rely on that 100%. So, okay, we won't go into what I did or didn't do. That's not the issue. But how does this what you're saying? I make connections.
Okay. Triangle K is run by people who are Orthodox,
right?
And they wouldn't allow Gevinas Yisroel. They wouldn't allow Gevinas Yisroel. Whether it's good or not, Hefsher is not for right now. But they wouldn't allow it. But there are people out there who will say they will tell you, look, it says right here in the Ramah that Gevinas Yisroel is not a problem, and it's all mutter. Okay, that's where they come from. That's what we're talking about. Okay, anyhow, so what I was saying was the everything I told you now was the simple, regular way that everybody understands it, and that is correct. I'm just going to point out to you, and we're not going to go into detail on it, just tell you a few of the details of a few of the points that the Chazon Ish makes. The Chazon Ish is Siman Mem, Okay, it's very interesting. Someone has no. Usually in the Chazon Ish, every couple of paragraphs there's a new letter like Aleph, Beis, Gimel. Okay, this one isn't. It's a long shtickle. It's really something. It's really deep into the dinim of what's going on over here. Very, very involved in this din. For those of you who have patience, you go see it. But the Chazon Ish has a completely different way of learning this din. Okay, he learns this din completely not like what I told you. Everything I told you, he doesn't agree, basically. And he says, and he has a whole different shot. He says, Rabbeinu Tam and the Gevinas Yisroel do not agree with each other. They're really saying two different shitas. He says they hold, the Gevinas Yisroel hold that the takana of Gevinas Akum is like cholav Akum, which is you don't need to have, it's not really a takana, you just need 100% birur that the food is kosher. Not only that, he says the Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah paskin like the Gevinas Yisroel. They paskin that the reason why you're not allowed to eat Gevinas Akum is because of gilui. It's because a snake might put poison into it. No, they paskin like. I don't remember. I have my notes. It says gilui. I don't remember. I think I think they hold that I don't remember. Whatever the issue is because of gilui. But listen to this. He says this, and listen to this. This is what Ken said before. The Ramah says, but just think for a second. If the issue is because of gilui, if the issue is because a snake might have put poison into it, it doesn't help to watch the person making the cheese. What's the point of watching the guy make the cheese? The problem is a snake might have put poison into it. So, the Ramah doesn't say the Yid has to watch the cheese. The Ramah says, Yisroel roya asiyas ha-gevinas v'ha-chaliva. That according to the Gevinas Yisroel only make if you watched it from the time you made the milk the cows all the way till you make the cheese. Now we all read that you have to watch the milking to make it chol v'yisrael. The Rambam is not sticking in that of course the milk has to be kosher. It's like sort of like a stuck-in thing that Aleph talked about a Yid watching the milking. He says, well here you watch the milking all the way till the cheese making. The Chazon Ish says, no, that's not what he means. He means is we're making in the case where the Yid watches from the milking till the cheese making, and not watching the milking because you want to make sure it's not treif milk. It doesn't help to make it chol stam. Chol stam is not going to make it mutter. You have to watch it to make sure there was never uncovered that a snake could go put poison into it. So that means what? It's a good question. I don't know why he says it that way, but he says that's what the Ramah means, and he's only being makel if you makbet for gilui. That's what the Ramah means by gilui. He makes a dik in the further Ramah about maybe b'diavad you could be samech on that, but the whole issue is because of gilui, and so the way he learns the two statements of the Ramah. I read you two statements of the Ramah. One is you have to have Gevinas Yisroel. The other is the way to make Gevinas Yisroel is by watching. Okay, most people, all of us, read that as two completely unrelated statements. One is we paskin that you have like Gevinas Yisroel. Two is the way you make Gevinas Yisroel is by watching it. They're not connected to each other. According to the Chazon Ish, those two dinim are the same thing. It's we hold that you have to have Gevinas Yisroel because of gilui, and therefore the way you make Gevinas Yisroel is by watching it all the way from the milk and all the way through to the end. So according to that, the Ramah never said that watching, this is going to be for next time, the Ramah never said that by watching cheese making, that makes it Gevinas Yisroel. It has nothing to do. The way you make the Ramah is talking about a different thing. How do you make sure that there isn't gilui? We make gilui by watching it all the way through. If you just stood there by the cheese making, Ken showed up for the cheese making, but he wasn't there from the milking, it doesn't do anything. They filled up the tank before he came there, the milk was all sitting in the tank, it's worthless. Okay? It's not Gevinas Yisroel. According to the Chazon Ish, it's not Gevinas Yisroel. Even though he watched and thrown the red, he put in the red himself, it's not Gevinas Yisroel. Okay, so again, I'm telling it to you because there's such a sheet. He said, no, they were not makbid and gilui. We pass like the Chacham and Avodah with the knech that we're makbid and gilui. It's a combination sheet.
So we're makbid and gilui?
We're makbid and gilui, yes.
Or not?
We're makbid and gilui in this case. I don't remember if he says this, but as I said to you before, the Beis Yosef says this is a case to be more makbid and gilui than other cases. I don't remember if he throws in the Beis Yosef for that.
Yeah, he needs it in the milk. We're not makbid and gilui in any milk.
No,
I'll just feed a cup of milk on the table.
Because there was takanas chachamim that when you eat cheese, you can only eat cheese if you make sure that there's no poison inside it. Usually takanas that have to do with gilui don't apply nowadays. But like you said, the cup of milk itself you can drink. Usually the takanas of gilui don't apply. In this case,
the cup of milk is kosher, but if I want to make cheese out of it, I can't.
Right.
And it's trade for making.
Okay, you have a whole Shabbos to see the Chazon Ish. You should see it anyhow. It's very involved in all the dinim over here. Okay, let's go through some. Hopefully we have a few minutes to like this. When we learned about Chol Yisrael, when we looked at Chol Yisroel, the Ramah over there said that you have to, if Chol Akum was used on Kalim, or Gevinas Akum was used on Kalim, you have to kasher those Kalim before you use them for kosher food. So we said over there that there were two ways of looking at Chol Stam. If you remember, we talked about it. Assuming that Chol Stam, we don't need Chol Stam, do you need to kasher between that and making, let's say, a Chol Yisroel thing or a Parav thing afterwards? Okay? There were two ways of looking at it. Okay? Rabbi Shefter had looked at it and he said, well, it's only a chumrah to not eat Chol Stam. Really, it's really kosher. It's only a chumrah to not eat it. And therefore, the Shach says, a few simanim later, the Shach says that if I'm only doing something because of a chumrah, I'm only doing something because I'm being more machmir. I have a minhag to be more machmir than you. So then I don't have to kasher after using your kelim. If you did something because you hold like the mekilim, I could use your kelim that kashering. So he said the same thing. Chol Stam we consider it to be mutter. It's only a chumrah to not do it, and therefore you don't have to kasher. You don't have to kasher the kelim. So that's what we had. And Rabbi Belsky didn't agree with that. Rabbi Belsky said, no, it's not. We don't pass like that. It's not a chumrah. It's just there are people who make them, people who machmir. It's not a chumrah. Okay.
So the Shefter holds you don't have to kasher after Chol.
You don't have to kasher.
You can call for his part, or you can call Yisroel without kashering.
They can go from one to the other. Well, if you remember, there was a knetch. It has to be Ein Ben Yarmin. It has to be Ein Ben Yarmin because there are some Chol Yisroel people who don't want to do what he says, so he wants to help them out, so he makes it Ein Ben Yarmin. But otherwise, yes, he doesn't think you have to kasher. Okay. So now, even that's what we said back then when we were in Chol Akum. Nobody says that when it comes to Gevinas Akum. Okay? The din is the same. After Gevinas Akum, just like the Chol Akum, you have to kasher. Nobody says, wait, there's two shittas in the Ramah. There's two minhagim. V'chein aminig this way, and Moshe Malkin should not go this way. But nobody walks around saying, because there are people who have a minhag to be makel, so we shouldn't be makbir, we shouldn't kasher if the Gevinas Akum. That would be great. That would be Akum's life much easier. We don't have to kasher if the Gevinas Akum. We say, well, don't be kasher, just wait it to be in Ben Yarmin. Because he says, it's just a minhag. The Shach says if it's just a minhag, so we can make them. So I have two ways of looking at that. Why don't we do it the same as Chol? Why are we taking this differently than that one did? And one is just because we just sort of completely reject that shita. Okay, we so much hold of the shita of the Machmirim that Gevinas Akum is also. It's so everybody does that. It's so completely accepted. The Ramah says ve'ein lifer together that we completely reject that shita. It's not we're just being a minute to be machmir. We've completely wiped out that shita. Okay. So that would be one way of looking at it. It's just because of the strength of why we believe that Gevinas Akum is also. The other way to say it is, the other way you could think is that maybe the Ramah maybe the Shach was only Mako when the person who did the cooking did it better. The person who did the cooking did something that for him was completely mutter. I live in a place where whatever thing is, we hold the minute that this thing is mutter. When I cooked in that pot, I was doing 100% right what I was doing. I didn't do anything wrong. Now you want to use the pot. The pot is kosher. I cooked food that for me was kosher. You want to use it. It's just a minute. Don't be so worried about it. You don't have to kasher through it. But what happens if the person who did the cooking himself considered it treif? Okay, so what happens if the person himself, I would have cooked Gevinas Akum in a pot. So I can't say as well, other people have a minute to consider Gevinas Akum to be mutter. No. For me, I cooked something that was completely treif. Maybe we're only makel in cases when the person who's doing the original cooking was a person who had that minute to be makel. So like in the case of Chol Akum, the Chol Stam, the people making the Chol Stam, today it has a CRC Chol Stam. It's considered kosher. So you want to say tomorrow should be kasher after it. When we're making another thing, well, it was made beheter. It was made as kosher food. Those came stayed kosher. But maybe when the person originally made it was treif, the company, I understand it's a kosher company, but the company under our auspices was making a food that was, until now that was treif. So they made something that was treif. As far as we're concerned, that was treif. We don't have a right to be makel about that. And the nafkamina between these cases is, there's a practical nafkamina. I didn't make up the case. The nafkamina is like this. What happens if somebody used kalim to cook kidneys on them, and now they want to make Pesach food on them? Okay, not in their house, a company, a manufacturer. He made foods that are made with corn syrup, 60% corn syrup, but now he switches over. He's making Pesach food on those kalim. So should we be kasher those kalim, or should we not kasher those kalim? Okay, so according to the first way of looking at it, which is it's because of the chomer of how seriously we take something, then it's debatable. Okay? Then it's debatable. Is kitniyas a more chomer or less chomer? All Ashkenazim don't eat kitniyas. So is that more or less chomer? Maybe that's so chomer, it's like Gevinas Yisroel. We all do it. If we all do that, it's so chomer that we don't kasher after it. Or maybe it's not so chomer. This again, Rav Dovsky, we've talked about this. Rav Shach says, nah, just a minute. It's a minute. You don't have to kasher after it. Okay? And Rav Dovsky says, no, it's a serious minute.
What do anyways?
What do you say? I'm talking about where it's not papa, of course, where it's not papa. So he says, Rav Shach says, nah, it's not such a serious meaning. And Rav Dovsky says, yes, it is a serious meaning. But if you look at it the second way, that it's the only time you could rely on the shach is when the person did it beheter. The person did it when he was doing, it was completely kosher. That doesn't apply to kitniyas. The person who cooked the kitniyas food, it was kitniyas even when he cooked it. It was kosher per se, but it wasn't kosher Pesach when he made it. It was kitniyas that time also. So of course, when that person wants to then go ahead and kasher afterwards, he can't be someone on the shach. Okay, we're not going to go into it, but there were other reasons to think. I think we've talked about it. There are other reasons to think that you maybe should or should not kasher for kitniyas. Okay, Lamai says that we do kasher for kitniyas. That's what Schwartz has said. It's pretty accepted that people kasher between kitniyas and Pesach food. Even if it's pretty accepted that people do it. And just for the picture of it, just for the picture to see how common it is, if you called up a shul rabbi and said, my baby needs to eat kitniyas on Pesach, he can say, okay, your baby can eat kitniyas and wash the things in the bathroom sink. Don't wash it in your kitchen sink. Why? Because we don't mix kitniyas into regular food. We keep them separate from each other. That's the common thing to do. And by and large, not everybody, but by and large, Ashkenazis do that.
Like somebody calls up to the Ashkenazi, he wants to eat a Tzadi on Pesach.
That's a good question. That might be the shach. That might be the shach that the shach says you're allowed to. It's a question. Rav Dovsky Shach, how you should take that. How seriously you should take that. If you want to eat it, that's not the case of the shach. No, but kitniyas, but still going to someone else's house. It depends how you want to read it. Okay. That's one list. I told you, no one's makel to not kasher after Gevinas Yisroel. No one says, the minhag is that it's only the shadow of the minhag. So no one's makel about it. I'll just remind you that we did say that sometimes this Rabbeinu Tam is a tziruf. Okay, and it comes to the case of a person who would have to leave in gomer after using a kli. Just oven. You use an oven dough and they cook pastries on it that have Gevinas Yisroel in them. So among the tzirufim that we use to only say do liban kal instead of liban gomer is the fact that some hold there's a legitimate shita that holds that there's no issur, so to speak, of Gevinas Yisroel altogether. There are other tzirufim there. The most serious of other tzirufim is that it's a machlokes where the Gevinas Yisroel is bought the baroy, bought the b'shishin. So the Malcolm Hesed we're being soimed that it's bought the baroy, which no pastries is more than 50% cheese. So the liban gomer of it we're making to do liban kal. That's a case. So that's a little bit of a case where we're being soimed. We're being mitzareh of the fact that it could be that Gevina is really mutter, that Gevinas Yisroel is really mutter nowadays. But by and large, we don't say like that. And even though there's such a minhag here, Chol Hastam doesn't say Shulchan Aruch, and Gevinas Yisroel being mutter does, even though we don't consider that, so to speak, at all, and to vehicle to not kasher.